Hey guys, I know there's so much information out about the tariffs. It's very confusing sometimes and overwhelming. I just wanted to run down a few facts for you to summarize what's happened, and that will help you follow what's going on if you want. To recap, on the 2nd of April, what Trump called Liberation Day, the US imposed tariffs on 185 countries, ranging from 10% all the way up to 50%. Who or what was on the list is something the White House has put on its socials. You can check that out for yourself. I always urge people to look at the actual source if it's available before any secondary information. So what's the reasoning behind these tariffs? According to the White House, it's to even out the trade deficit. In other words, how much the US buys from other countries versus how much it sells to them. The difference is what you call the deficit. So, for instance, the US buys more goods from China than it sells to them. That difference is the deficit. And Trump says this is unfair because there are many countries that the US sells to, but they don't buy an equal amount back. It makes sense on paper, right? But in a second, I'll tell you why it's a bit more complicated than that. So, how did the White House come up with these tariff numbers? So what they did was go through each country on the trading list and some others too, if you've been following the news, and calculated what that difference was. And they used a really complicated calculation. You may have seen the formula floating around. But in simple terms, they figured out the difference and calculated what they called a discounted rate and came up with a tariff for each country. So a tariff essentially means there's a tax added onto any product that's bought from that country. So for instance, if you buy shoes that are made in China, now they'll have an additional tariff or tax added to it. In China's case, it's 34%. Trump's team says this tariff will be absorbed by these other countries, but in reality, companies will raise the prices of their goods to make up for the tariffs, even though some countries are looking at ways to support some of their industries. And you've heard this before, it means consumers will pay more. So how does the White House justify this? Trump says this is a painful period that will get better over time. It's kind of like ripping off the Band-Aid of what he believes is a bad economic situation. He's called it an operation that's now over and the patient is healing. The White House is hoping the tariffs will even out those trade deficits, bring manufacturers to the US because any production in the US won't have these tariffs. And they're also hoping to raise some revenues from these tariffs. That's the dream of vision, but does it make sense? Okay, so it will raise some revenue. It may even out some of the deficits. But here are a few things to think about and why this is a way too simple way of looking at the tariffs. Firstly, American spending habits. Americans spend and consume more than they earn. So they will continue to run up a deficit because Americans simply buy more. Secondly, trade deficits happen naturally because goods are produced wherever it makes sense. The US may not have all the resources and expertise to produce everything. No country does. No country has that. So for instance, it's cheaper to buy an imported shoe from China than buy a shoe that's made from scratch in the US because of labor or material costs. Those are higher in the US. Another example, foods are made in different parts of the world because of climate, ingredients, resources, minerals. The world's largest diamond mines are in Russia and Africa. That's just where they are. So by that logic, manufacturing jobs will go wherever it makes sense to make those products. There are many other points to consider. For instance, a trade war where we're already seeing China threaten new tariffs on US goods. Other countries would likely do the same. Then there's the most basic issue that will hit all consumers and households, the costs of goods going up, which means inflation goes up. And in the long run, more importantly, depending on how long this goes on, the wider picture is that countries will start trading with each other and avoid the US to avoid its tariffs. So in the end, instead of bringing more money and jobs to the US, it might take some of those away. So these are just some of the basics. You can read and learn a lot more on your own. I'm going to put this on YouTube, and I'm going to put some links on as well that you can check and read for yourself. These are just going to be simple and basic articles just to help you. I don't normally post editorials or opinions because that's personal, unless it's a source that's very newsworthy. Feel free to message me, correct me, suggest information. This is a conversation and a dialogue, not a monologue. I'm doing this because I have to do this every single day for my job. I have to go through information like this every day. It doesn't take me that long to do it, but I know there's a lot of information to sift through. So I hope this is helpful, that it gives you building blocks and empowers you to engage and do your own research. And if you find this helpful and like what you see, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm just starting this out, but then you won't miss anything that's coming up, and hopefully it's all helpful to you. So let me know what you think.